this. I left the city, I've been browsing, treading water that they drowning. My head on a swivel, yeah. It's only really my surroundings.
Hello and welcome to episode 185 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDadFF. Joining me as always is my partner in crime, the one, the only, FF Snoog. How you doing tonight, brother?
We're doing good, man. And Alvin Kamara's back finally. 13 catches, 30 yards. That's how we do it. PPR monster. I'm excited. I'm excited to talk some fantasy with two of the best to ever do it.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty as far as yardage wise, but we'll take it for PPR, right? And we'll be giving away that Alvin Kamara mini helmet later on this week. So you guys, stay tuned, keep following for that. This week was just super exciting. The entire atmosphere. We're at that quarter way, Snoog, where we're fourth way through the season. We're all starting to figure out, are we a playoff team? Are we a contender? Are we a pretender? And one of the guys that's been helping us do that, he's been helping everybody on Twitter lately. He's been blowing up, obviously the host of No Expert Fantasy Football Content, Joe Orrico. Welcome to the show, brother.
How we doing, guys? Thank you for having me. Let's get into it. Going to be a good one. Very excited. Really appreciate the invite. No
Joe, tell me real quick how you got started in the industry, how long you've been doing this. And if you guys don't follow him, absolute at No Expert FF on Twitter, absolute beast. He's been putting out phenomenal content for redraft. He's a must follow when you're kind of looking into getting yourself set up for the playoffs.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, likewise. When Dynasty season comes around, where I'll be tuned. Hopefully I can join you guys a little bit in that journey as well. But yeah, realized one day I spend way too much time on fantasy trying to win my leagues. So might as well put the content out there. I'm driven. I love it. It's my favorite thing. So here we are. And like I said, very excited to start and can't stop, won't stop.
Yeah. And that's kind of how we got started too, is it's like you put so much time into your team and then it's over, and like for me, it's like Madden franchise mode started it all for me for Dynasty, right? You're making them trades and it never ends. We carried it over to here. So excited to chop it up here with you. And try to get things going. Tonight's podcast, what we're going to do is like I said, since we're 1/4 of the way through the season, there's been a lot of things to change. Nobody's draft board looks the same as what it was day one. So we're going to do a one quarterback mock. We're going to talk about some of our favorite players as we go along and really try to put you guys in that position to, win yourself a fantasy championship. Joe, since you specialize a lot more in redraft and we talk a lot about, breaking things into quarterlies. So that way, in Dynasty, it's like, hey, am I rebuilding? Am I going all the way? How do you talk to teams that are right now, they got one win or they're sitting there at 2-2, 1-3, maybe even 0-4, in Dynasty, we start saying, hey, let's rebuild. Let's start look at things. How do you go about advising people on that? Because I know on your channel, people are asking you questions all the time about how do I get myself into that position where I'm going to be a playoff team?
Yeah. It's the biggest question I get asked from my subscribers. And realistically, nothing else matters other than the next game. Mm-hmm. Every person you're waiting for on your bench to explode, got to exhaust the resources. You have a starting lineup, you have nothing else. You look ahead maybe 1 week if you want to stream defenses. You don't leave it up to chance on the waivers. You get your guys, cash in, get a starting lineup out there. I just, in one of my leagues, full transparency, 0-4. And by the way, nobody works harder in that league than me. And traded this week, went and got Justin Fields. I couldn't look at Dak in my lineup anymore. Justin Fields, welcome to the team. Last week, I traded like 3 running backs, acquired CMC. Those are the type of moves you need to make. I will be, cautious in saying, don't, just forget about a guy like Jalen Waddle, or don't just like throw away Chris Olave, for example, after one bad week. If anything, go get them, because oftentimes, come week 10, maybe Tyreek Hill managers are going to be like, damn, what happened here? Like, where did the Jalen Waddle guy come from? So, but my best advice would be you need to go get that win. The next week is really the one that matters. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I love that because we're on bye week right now, and this week's going to be, you got Godwin, you got Evans, you got Keenan Allen, you have a lot of guys that if you're 0-4, you're 1-3, you might be wanting to push those guys for another one. That's a great Great piece of advice there. Let's get this thing kicked off. We're going to give you that 101, that first overall pick. You're on the board. Tell us who you like and why.
Yeah, so the 101 for me, honestly, hasn't changed since this all began. For me, it always has been Christian McCaffrey. So I'm going to wait to select him for a sec. I have 2 minutes, but with Christian McCaffrey, only other running back besides Danian Tomlinson to go back-to-back PPR top 2 running backs, and he missed that back-to-back number 1 spot by like less than 1 point on the season to Saquon Barkley's rookie year. When he is healthy, there is no better player for fantasy football on the face of the planet. And if you don't own him, tune into the games every once in a while. He's on a mission. I mean, I'm hearing Christian McCaffrey MVP chants and talks on Twitter. And quite frankly, it's very justified. Nobody is doing what he's doing. He's putting up numbers that a wide receiver 1 that you draft at the end of the first round is putting up. He's a running back. And then he's scoring 3 touchdowns as well. Should have had 5 this week. And honestly, when you watch Christian McCaffrey, it doesn't seem that hard. Like, it doesn't seem impossible. If he drops 40 again in week 5, I'm not going to bat an eye. So I'm going to go ahead, select McCaffrey. Zero disrespect to JJ, Eckler, etc. But for me, it's McCaffrey for sure.
Yeah, and that's the right pick. I mean, obviously, looking at what he did in PPR this week, what was it, 54 fantasy points? I mean, that's a weekly winner. That's a league winner. For me, and this is kind of where I've been on this, is I'm taking Justin Jefferson, and I don't fault anybody for taking Christian McCaffrey, but Justin Jefferson just gives you that safe floor. We know the wide receivers are, have that lower injury risk, and what he's been able to do. I mean, he's on pace for well over 2,000 yards, and I think he gets it this year, which would be phenomenal. But I mean, his value cannot go up any higher. He is what I say is the absolute safest pick when you come to this type of draft. I'm taking Justin Jefferson. Now it gets a little bit trickier. We're going to kick it over to Snoog. You get 2 picks in a row here, brother.
Yeah, I mean, the first one's an easy pick for me. I mean, this is my 103 all through the offseason. Tyreek Hill, 25-plus points per game throughout the first 4 weeks, and he's on a mission as well. Him and J. Jeff are just chasing down that 2,000 mark number, and one of them's going to hit it this year. I'm confident in that, and Tua and Kirk are playing phenomenal football. Kirk ain't winning, but Tua is, and both of them are absolutely crushing it. So I think Tyreek Hill is literally symmetrical with Justin Jefferson here, so you just take whoever falls. Next pick is tricky, though. I really want to believe that it should be somebody, but I think I'm just going to – I love to just ride it with the running back stack. I really think Bijan Robinson's phenomenal, and what he's done in his first 4 games is also phenomenal. I think he has 3 games with 20-plus points per game. He's a PPR machine out of the backfield. Desmond Ridder can't throw the ball 10 yards down the field, so all those targets are going to Bijan Robinson. And Arthur Smith said they're going to ride it out with Ridder, so that means more Bijan Robinson targets. You guys saw the one-handed snag. He makes things look so effortless on that football field. Highest prospect I've ever graded at the position, and I think he's the clear best, or one of, right behind CMC, best running back in the NFL.
Joe, we go to the wrap there, and obviously, I mean, we're letting team number 4 pick. Jamar Chase is someone that people are asking about so often, right? I mean, that Cincinnati offense is struggling mightily. Today, we keep putting out all this weekly content, and people are like, Jamar Chase, is he a buy or a sell? And it's like, in Dynasty, he's an absolute buy. Right. Long term, no issues at all. How worried are you about this Cincinnati offense? Because he showed signs in week 3. He looked phenomenal, but this offense is struggling mightily. How are you advising people in redraft to work with Jamar Chase? Because I've been advocating, hey, let's tear down a little bit. Let's go to, in our areas of A.J. Brown or some Stephon Diggs, guys that, are absolute studs that are getting it done.
Yeah, it's very trendy right now to be all out, to say it's a lost season, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, I mean, realistically, you saw 14.3 points this week on 9 targets as a floor, not even a touchdown. I mean, that's good. If that's a floor, that's more than good. It's very good. The bye is week 7. If you're a team that's 3-1, 4-0, I'm trading for Jamar Chase, because the guy who has him probably isn't doing great and is looking at the bye week. I would go acquire him. You could probably have him as your wide receiver 2 on your team. I like that a lot. And I think it's going to pay off later in the year, kind of like Herbert, Justin Herbert, and his investments tied to him did later in the year after he sorted out the ribs and the receivers got healthy. I view it very similarly. I don't think these guys are just going to give up. So
I like it. Because, I mean, a lot of people are really just they're hitting that panic button for no reason.
Right.
For me here, and I know you guys started hitting the running backs a little bit. I'm going to take Stephon Diggs. I think Diggs right now has a top 5 floor every single week, or top 5 ceiling every single week, but he's a wide receiver 1 floor. I mean, Stephon Diggs tied to Josh Allen is an absolute smash here. And I like to build my teams early based off the wide receiver position. So, Joe, you're the star of the show here. You got 2 picks in a row. Now we started to go very similar right now to how things were, pre-draft season. Now we get to a weird spot, right? Now we have this area where it's like we lost Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley's been injured, Travis Kelce hasn't quite put up the same numbers. Where do you go with these next 2 picks?
Yeah, so I have, and again, I'm kind of going to ignore my roster construction here. I'm kind of just going to go in order. We're doing a ranking, if you will.
Absolutely.
The next guy for me is Tony Pollard. I think there's 3 running backs that you look at them and you say, these are the guys. Back when I was growing up, it was 12, and they went 1 through 12 in drafts for a good reason. That's not the case anymore. You have McCaffrey, Bijan, and Pollard right now. I leave out Barkley. I leave out Eckler. They're dealing with injuries. Let's see a game first, right? But those 3, I say there's no risk here. Knock on wood, obviously. And the risk that there is, I'm willing to take on. I'm willing to take on that Bijan's a rookie. I'm willing to take on that McCaffrey's missed a season or 2 before. I'm willing to take on that Pollard's never been the guy. Pollard's the guy right now as the RB3 rest of season. For me, not a great game here in week 4, only 9 fantasy points. But again, these game scripts for the Cowboys are ridiculous. I mean, the defense puts up 21 points, 3 touchdowns worth of real life points. These offensive weapons are not going to be amazing. You're seeing it with Lamb a bit, obviously with Dak. I think they're really being slept on. People are finally giving Pollard his respect, but he is my pick. View him as a top 3 guy. So I'm going to go ahead and select him.
I love that, because Snoog and I all offseason were catching a lot of flack. We're like, hey, this is an area where we have to absolutely, look at what Tony Pollard has done in the past. His efficiency was phenomenal. Then he gets the bell cow roll, and people are like, he's going to break down. He has looked absolutely amazing throughout this season. You have him 3 rest of schedule.
Yeah, 3 rest of season. Obviously Eckler and Barkley are going to probably have something to say about that at some point. I mean, that's your top 5, but it's just hard to throw dudes who are not playing right now in the top 5 or whatever. And I see it auto picked for me or whatever, Kelce, but he was my next pick. I'm not too worried about Kelce at all. And I'll make this quick because I didn't use the timer there. Not amazing outputs, yet to surpass 20 points. He had 19.9 in week 3, obviously injured week 1. But again, Mahomes they've had some weird game scripts too. And Mahomes didn't look like himself in week 4. The schedule is incredible. Minnesota, Denver, Chargers, Denver again, then Miami, then the bye. I mean, if you could handpick matchups, those are literally the matchups. So the Kelce 40-pointer is coming. He's the lead receiver, 8+ targets every game. Kelce should be, up there.
That's a great pick. I think a lot of people are just, they're so used to set it and forget it with Travis Kelce that he's putting up 25 points in tight end premium that people are starting to think that he's not playing up to snuff. But you're right, it is coming. Right. My pick here is AJ Brown. I think AJ Brown, he's been the wide receiver 1 over the last 2 weeks. We had that little bit of a scuffle on the side with him and Jalen Hurts. Ever since then, he's just led the league in pretty much everything, over these last 2 weeks. He's looked phenomenal, and I absolutely love what he's doing in this offense. You're going to have these, Joe, a lot of times we have things where, they're talking about it's AJ Brown week, is it Devonta Smith week? I think I'm comfortable starting both of those. We start to get to a lot of other teams, like is it a Nico Collins or a Tank Dell week? Is it T. Higgins or Jamar Chase with the way that offense is going? For me, both the Eagles, I'm set it, forget it, and let's roll.
Yeah, totally agree. Rest of season, I do prefer AJ Brown a little bit, but you dynasty guys, man, definitely convincing me on Devonta Smith. He was a guy I was off just at the price. I liked Olave, like for redraft, for example, and Waddle and those guys more. Some people didn't, no big deal. Admittedly, I was pretty wrong. I think he's definitely a top 15 guy rest of season for sure.
Yeah, and it's tough when that's an offense where I love DeAndre Swift. I've been huge on Jalen Hurts. I'm pretty close to the Philly area. But then you have both these guys. The question for me that I keep getting from everybody is Dallas Goedert. I mean, Dallas Goedert has almost disappeared in this offense right now. And with the emergence of how well DeAndre Swift has played and how much red zone opportunities that obviously Jalen Hurts is running in, how worried are you about Dallas Goedert the rest of the season? I get people talking him outside their top 10. I got him as my tight end 8 right now. And I think bigger games are coming down the stretch. But for right now, a lot of people are worried about putting him in their lineup.
Yeah, I mean, for my followers, sorry. I mean, every post every day was, Goddard or Waller in rounds 6 through 8, whatever, wherever they were going. They're my favorite picks.
Yeah.
And, right now, not working out so much. I've reached the point where Goddard is going to see the bench. 2 more weeks of this, he can be dropped. But like a guy like Ferguson, for example, is going to be starting over Goddard, unfortunately. And the one thing in my department that I didn't necessarily account for with Goddard was the OC change.
Mhm.
And it's just very clear. Like, obviously, he's a fundamental part of the offense, plays 90% of snaps or more, usually more. But the targets are just 4 yards from the line of scrimmage. And it's just not really materializing yet. One of the games they ran a fake like tush push or whatever, and he was wide open, but the play got blown up or there was a penalty, blah, blah. But whatever reason, it just isn't working right now. So he sees the bench for now. And, Ingram, Komet, even Ferguson, those guys are all going in over him. Definitely Laporta.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't sit back and just say, "Well, next week." I've been doing that a lot with Kyle Pitts in my redraft, and it's like, next week's going to be good. Snoog, you're back, and I know your boy just fell to you.
Yeah, I had to go with Devontae Adams here because I literally still don't think there's like 4 wide receivers better than him. I think it literally goes J.J.F., Tyreek Hill, and then Devontae Adams, and everyone. I pounded the drum for him all off season. He's one of my most owned dynasty wide receivers because of how cheap he was, and everyone was scared of Jimmy G, but Jimmy G's done nothing but absolutely feed this guy 50 targets through 4 weeks. That's like a 200 pace. That's not going to happen, but he's probably going to be in the 170, 180 range, and he's the wide receiver 6 through 4 weeks as well. So dude was playing with Aiden McConnell and Jimmy Garoppolo, and it doesn't matter. He played with Derek Carr. He played with Aaron Rodgers. I could go out there and throw him the football, and he'd still put up wide receiver 1 numbers. So I think Devontae Adams is still one of the best in the game, and that's why I'm taking him over CeeDee Lamb. Even with the question marks at quarterback, I just think he's too good to not go over him, and Dak hasn't impressed me too much. The next pick here.
Well, can we go over real quick where we're at with the ghost guy picking there with Saquon Barkley and talk to Joe about Saquon a little bit? I mean, the Giants offense is abysmal right now. Is it the lack of Saquon Barkley? If he comes back, does it get a little bit better? Or is Saquon literally the only guy we're trusting in this entire offense? Because just like you, I was all in on Darren Waller, as my tight end 3, tight end 4 going in. Does Barkley interject some life into this offense where Daniel Jones becomes semi-viable and super flex and Darren Waller starts to come back? Or is it just Saquon and then let's forget about the rest of this offense?
Yeah, I think he does because right now it is literally just Daniel Jones, and they're shutting down the run from him for the most part. Obviously, he had a nice night running it last night, and if he is not staring down Darren Waller and completing that, there's not much going on. So when Barkley comes back, I think it's going to get better. Again, just another trendy viewpoint to be very out on the Giants, with the jokes and this and that. I get it, but anytime everyone's moving one way, you should at least consider the other way. Right? Yeah. Like, what if you're wrong? What if everyone's wrong? And now all of a sudden you just traded for Daniel Jones for pocket change and you have a nice top 15 QB. You traded for Saquon Barkley for pocket change and you have a top 5 RB because a healthy Saquon is just that, regardless of matchup, right? And they need him bad. So I think when he comes back, he's going to be utilized heavily, and I'm looking forward to it, honestly. I'm not on the train of, just killing the Giants, honestly.
And that's a great point because in Dynasty, we do that all the time, right? Like people get so out on a player because of where they're at, and because of the way the narrative's going. So, I mean, if that's the case, obviously Saquon and Daniel Jones do have some buy potential. Snoog, you're back up, brother.
Yeah, I love going wide receiver heavy.
Oh, my God.
Formats, especially since I went Bijan Robinson. So I'm just going to play the board here. Amon-Ra St. Brown's a guy that's going to clear 100 receptions this year as long as he's healthy. Clear number 1 option in the Lions passing game. Goff's go-to target, and he's just a playmaker. I mean, I've been getting to watch a lot more of him diving into his film through the first 4 weeks, and he's just been so great after the catch. He had that one play against the Packers where he broke like 6 people's ankles. I feel bad for those guys because they probably went home with spats up to their knees, but Amon-Ra St. Brown's just a great player. He's very fundamentally sound, and I wasn't super, super high on him in the past, but I'm starting to come around on him more because I just think his role is what's going to make him so well. Not necessarily as much as talent. I don't think he's like a top 5 talent or top 12, top 10 talent, but I think he is one of the better wide receivers, and I think he has a really safe floor with those 20-plus point week upsides.
with my pick here, and this is where the dynasty world versus the redraft world gets interesting, right? Because we love guys like Garrett Wilson and Jalen Waddle and Chris Olave in the offseason, but it's guys like what we have on here with Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, and my man Keenan Allen, who I was buying everywhere in dynasty for less than a first-round pick. Keenan Allen is the wide,
see him.
right?
I didn't even see him.
Maybe we'll make a trade after this, but you guys know that you guys follow me. Keenan Allen has been my guy. Absolutely love him. Tied to Justin Herbert. Now I know Herbert, has the injured finger here, but they get the bye week. He's going to get things right. He's going to get peppered with targets. I mean, obviously with Mike Williams out for the season, that changes things a little bit. I think he's going to see a lot more, press coverage and a lot of things like that. But Keenan Allen, absolute beast rest of the season, top 5 as long as he's healthy. Joe, when you look at things, year after year, we discredit these studs because they're aging, right? Everybody wants to say, well, Stephon Diggs is getting a little bit older. Tyreek Hill's getting a little bit older. Devontae Adams, he's older. He's got a new quarterback. Keenan Allen.
Christian McCaffrey. Yep.
Right. We want to make that new sexy piece, right? We wanted to say, obviously Chase and Jefferson are studs, but we wanted to put Wilson up there. We wanted to put Waddle. We wanted to put Olave. And when you're in redraft mode, you got to be taking the proven studs.
Yeah, there's definitely value. And honestly, the age lets you get these players out of value. I mean, Keenan Allen is at this point, first quarter of the season, whatever we're at, is an absolute league winner. If we're, using that term. And just because you can get him in the 5th or 6th round in some drafts, all the way back in the summer. So you got to capitalize on these discounts. A guy like Hopkins, for example, right? Doesn't work for everyone, but it's worth a shot. And, maybe Hopkins finishes strong, but who knows?
You are back on the clock for a double tap.
Yes. So I was hoping Keenan didn't go. And just looking at the board here, there are 2 players. I'm back to back, obviously, who are gonna do it for me. Obviously, the first one's gonna be my boy here, Travis Etienne. So we're gonna take Etienne. If you just look at the workload, okay, 23 touches last week. 23 opportunities, 24 the week before, 15, and then back to 23 in week 1. Quite simply, not many running backs get that amount of work. And the good thing about Travis Etienne is he's really good at football. I don't have to tell you guys. You guys are the ones that put me on to how good he is, right? So it's going to come here eventually. Houston, pretty good outing, 17.8. And then Atlanta's a tough matchup, right? But at Buffalo, on paper, it's in London, doesn't look great. We just saw Achane rip them up for 100 plus, I believe, over 10 a carry, if my memory serves me correctly. They give up those huge explosive runs. They run a zone scheme. So just be patient with Etienne. Not many running backs. These guys don't grow on trees who just get 20 opportunities and have a good quarterback. So the offensive line stinks. Hopefully it gets better. We'll see. And after Buffalo, Indianapolis, he put up 21 against them in week 1. Speaking of running backs that don't grow on trees, sticking with that theme here, and I am going to go with my boy Ramondre. And it's really just a similar vein, counting his opportunities, counting back from week 4, 17, 23, 18, 18. And his schedule has been absolutely brutal. The Jets and Dallas last 2 weeks, and in week 5 doesn't get much better. It plays New Orleans. But then after that, Las Vegas, Buffalo, we just talked about, Miami, Washington, the Colts. I mean, that's 5 games in a row where you're going to have a running back who catches passes, who sees 4 targets a game at least, able to run. So I'm really excited for Ramondre, one of my big buy lows right now. And it's really that tier under, McCaffrey, Pollard, and Bijan, where you can go get them. And then eventually you go trade for McCaffrey. Sounds crazy, but you can do it, So I really like Ramondre rest of season. And then there's kind of a big tier break here.
And that middle-class running back has disappeared, right? Like there's those elite guys up at the top. I love what you're saying about Ramondre Stevenson because that's someone that Snook and I have both been in on where people in Dynasty are hitting the panic button big time. I mean, like people last week were messaging me, hey, should I trade Ramondre for Zeke in a second? And they're like, whoa. No. I know they were talking about moving him in there, but obviously Ramondre Stevenson, better days are above. I'm taking this is going to be crazy. Like we talk about trades where we're like things that happened in the offseason. I'm taking Puka Nacua. He is the wide receiver 4 right now, 52 targets, 39 receptions, 501 yards. He's been absolutely amazing. Gets into the end zone for the first time this week. Joe, this is where we get into an interesting situation because Cooper Kupp could be back this week, and I think week 1, people were like, well, maybe it was just a flash, right? Because we've seen young wide receivers do something week 1 and then disappear. And then week 2, it was like, oh, wow, he did it again, like the exact same thing. Got to almost get rid of every disbeliever at that point. Then week 3, down a little bit. People are like, oh, well, that's where it is, right? Puka's going to come back down to earth. No, he goes right back out there, balls out again. When Cooper Kupp comes back, what kind of breakdown do you see? Do you just see this as Tutu Atwell starting to disappear a little bit? Because he's played really nicely as well. But I think Cooper Kupp and Puka both are sustainable the way that Matthew Stafford's slinging the ball for 300-plus yards a week.
I totally agree. I mean, Matthew Stafford's on pace for over 5,000 yards right now. Unfortunately, only 12 touchdowns. But listen, the thing with Puka is right now, without Cooper Kupp, he's a top 6 wide receiver, top 8 wide receiver. Kupp comes back. What does he drop to? Top 20? Well, guess what? When you picked him up, right, you just got a free wide receiver 2, worst case. So my advice is just to hold him. I mean, if you can go cash in for CeeDee Lamb, for example, I'd probably do that. Yeah. Right. Or Stephon Diggs or like any of these guys on the board who have gone before him. Sure. I'll trade him for that. But if not, I'll just keep my wide receiver 2 with, top 6 upside. Why would I not do that? And, you look at like Robert Woods, for example, it's a super easy comparison to make. Obviously, sometimes those aren't the best, but 3 straight years with Stafford and Kupp as a top 15 wide receiver. So it's definitely in the realm of possibilities, and Stafford's throwing it like upwards of 30 times a game, 300 yards. Just keep the guy. Why would you not?
Yeah, and I think, do you see a lot of your subscribers really talking about how it's like when they get a guy off of waivers, they get a Devin A-Chain, Achan. How do you? I keep pronouncing it wrong. We were all calling him A-Chain, but anyways. Or you get a Puka, or you get those guys, and they almost look at it as free money and then trade them too cheap sometimes. I mean, people are messaging me and they're like, you know what? I'm going to trade Devin for, maybe a guy that's maybe RB 15, 16. You're like, they can't keep this up. Or I'm going to trade Puka for, a wide receiver in that 15 to 20 range. Do you find that happen sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. And, I find that with my own teams. It's like how valuable is a known commodity, right? And what you have to do is you kind of just have to compare the known to the ceiling, because you have to compare it to what you could possibly be missing out on, right? So if you can get a player who matches this player's ceiling, congratulations, you've hit the lottery. I mean, literally, Achan for a guy like Brees right now, it's like, it's just super interesting. Especially with that name in particular. But, like I said, with Puka, I mean, any of these receivers you've seen go before him, I'm in on trading for that. Otherwise, I'm keeping my wide receiver 2 with top 8 upside.
Love it. Snoog, you're up, buddy.
Yeah, this is such an easy pick for me. And this is a guy, I mean, how many times are we going to do this to ourselves? Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby, Jonathan Taylor, Marlon Mack, Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. The list goes on and on and on. Kenneth Walker's elite. 5 touchdowns already this year. RB5 on the season. He looks phenomenal. He's out there grinding between the tackles, making unbelievable plays. I mean, this guy's just a playmaker, has that home run hitting speed, that highly upside that we want in today's NFL. They got Charbonnet to be that guy to go for it on 3rd and 2 or to give it to him maybe in pass pro. But like Walker's just a far better player. He's a more exciting player as well, and he's been outplaying him like crazy. I mean, Charbonnet, they gave him a situation last night where he had that rollout flat option. They went to him on 4th down. He dropped the ball. Like, you can't make those mistakes as a rookie. Kenneth Walker comes in and capitalizes. So this is a guy that, I mean, he already has 5 touchdowns, struggled in the red zone last year. He's been punching those touchdowns in this year. Run blocking looks better. He looks better between the tackles. So wheels up for him. He's a top 8 running back rest of the way.
Love it. You are up. The team 4 was like that auto draft guy that shows up to your draft. He takes Patrick Mahomes and then Nick Chubb. So that's even better for us. Gives us more guys for us to talk about. You are up again, Snoop.
I'm just gonna treat this as if we're going into week 5. Not even just like the whole season, but one of the best players that we've ever watched in fantasy football is Cooper Kupp, and he's almost worth the risk. If you're 4-0, like Joe said with Jamar Chase, go and trade for Cooper Kupp. You can afford that risk. Move off of those high-performing assets through the first 4 weeks. The guys like Puka, the guys like Tutu Atwell, the guys like Kyron Williams, because when Cooper Kupp comes back, we know what's going to happen. That's his team. 480 points or 470 points 2 years ago is just phenomenal. And I mean, this is his offense. He knows it like the back of his hand. So I'm excited to see him back and healthy, and my dynasty teams need it.
All right, so the next pick, this is somebody that I got in Scott Fishbowl. I have on all my dynasty teams, and Joe alluded to him, so I knew he might not make it on the way back. This is Breece Hall week. All right, look at what Denver has given up. Denver, week 2, Brian Robinson, 29 fantasy points. Week 3, Raheem Mostert and Devin Achane, a combined 96. Last week, Khalil Herbert, 22. And now they're saying that the pitch count's off for Breece Hall, that it's all systems go. The offense looked a little bit better last week. Breece Hall still leading in yards per touch. I think Breece Hall, I know this is a little bit early, but I think he is, we've used this word a couple times. I think this is a league winner down the stretch as he gets things going. I mean, every week it's been more carries, more touches, more snap count. This is the week for Breece Hall.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you drafted him for, by the way. Everything was week 5, week 6. It's going to be go time. Welcome to go time.
Thing is, well, now people are like, that's what we did, right? And we did the same with Jonathan Taylor in this area. And people are hitting the panic button now. And I'm like, you drafted him. You knew this was happening, right? You knew Breece Hall wasn't going to smash week 1 through 4. We knew it was going to take a while to get adjusted and get that thing back so he can make his cuts after that ACL tear. It's like
exactly.
Sometimes we double count things the wrong direction.
Yep. Same thing with Javonte, for example, obviously not working out as well, but did you not recall? Do you not recall why you drafted these players? But speaking of a guy who missed a couple games, and Snoogie's going to like this one, but it is going to be, if I can find him on these ADP lists here. I'm looking, I'm just going to search. I'm looking for one Alvin Kamara. So yeah, my team's full of running backs. Luckily, it's not a real team. It's just an order. I want to emphasize that again. But yeah, I mean, 14 targets. And I get that's because in his first game back, and I get that's because, Carr was banged up or whatever. Probably shouldn't have been out there. Chris Olave, et cetera, suffered from that. But yeah, 25 opportunities first week back, 75% of snaps. I mean, there was a world in 2017 where Kamara saw 3 games over 40% of snaps, I believe it was, and finished RB3. Mm-hmm. So he literally has rest of season RB1 overall potential here. And quite frankly, he's a guy who's been banged up in his career a little bit, always ends up playing those games, but he gets a little injured sometimes. He only has, 6 games till the bye and then finishes it out with another 6 games. So maybe the suspension, silver lining and everything. I mean, 75% of snaps from Kamara. And by the way, when Jamal Williams is healthy, it's not changing. So yeah, It's a wide receiver 1 in your running back position. It's ridiculous, right? Especially in PPR.
Yeah. And the best thing about it is he said that he was unlocking that new explosiveness with the trainer, getting that burst back. And when we saw it, he was great between the tackles, breaking a ton of tackles, falling forward for extra yards. He looked great. That whole offense was around him. I mean, 13 receptions. I know it was skewed a little bit, but a lot of those receptions were designed plays, shovel passes, getting them out in the flat, one-on-one Texas routes. I mean, he looked phenomenal in that game. And I think moving forward, the efficiency overall and kind of the offense itself will get better, especially if Derek Carr can actually throw the ball 10 yards without that AC joint injury.
Yeah, and I think, there's a stat going around. He had 33 yards on 13 catches. I think that's the lowest of all time on, any player who's ever caught 13 passes, 33 yards is like the lowest of all time. Don't care. Literally could care less. I will happily take my 16.3 fantasy points. Don't care. It's just like the meme you see all the time. Just 2 guys picking up 1 fantasy point, and it's like Ken Walker trucking 8 guys for 10 yards and Alvin Kamara getting tackled at the line of scrimmage after catching a pass. Don't care.
It's phenomenal for Kamara, but is it a problem for Chris Olave? I mean, we saw Chris Olave does a lot of underneath work. Almost everything went to Kamara. Carr looks like he's not able to throw the ball downfield like he was before. A lot of people are starting to hit that panic button where I saw people did that same with Garrett Wilson. Now they're starting to do the same with Chris Olave.
Yeah, I mean, my initial reaction's no. If it happens again next week, maybe. I think if Carr wasn't injured, it'd be a bit more of a conversation. But even with Olave, still saw 6 targets, had a massive 50-yard pass to the end zone. That was really great defense. Maybe he comes down with that, and no one's talking about this because we're looking at 14 fantasy points. But, with Olave, 10 plus targets weeks 1 through 3, if that falls to 8, and they're high quality targets because he's a really good receiver and he starts cashing in on some of those touchdowns, leads the league in receiving yards without a touchdown, by the way. So Olave, good buy low. But I went with here a guy who I don't love. I didn't love drafting him. And, even now it's not my favorite pick, but I should give respect that's due to Josh Jacobs, as a top 8 running back. And he's right out. He's in that same tier as ETN and Stevenson and Kamara underneath the big 3 running backs, right? It is Josh Jacobs. And obviously Aiden O'Connell really helped him with the 11 targets, but Jacobs has week winning potential. And when he does that 3 weeks in a row, all of a sudden it's league winning potential, right? Only 27.9 fantasy points. Obviously that's fantastic. This should have been a much bigger day. 3.4 a carry. It's not great against the Chargers. 17 carries, but 11 targets. I mean, what else do you want? What else do you want? So Jacobs is a good RB1 moving forward.
What else I want is some Devin A-Chain. Absolutely. Like 49 points. And it's same like we talked about with Puka, right? Like this is someone in Dynasty Snoog and I have put people onto, like putting him on all of your teams, getting him in that second round, loading up, and having those insurance running backs. We were thinking maybe it was an injury to Raheem Mostert before something happened, but he goes out in week 3, puts up 49 fantasy points, and people are like, okay, it was Denver. It was a blowout. Let's see what happens. Then what does he do against Buffalo? 26 fantasy points, an absolutely phenomenal, return to action there. For me in Dynasty, I'm ready to make him a Dynasty, top 10 running back. I put him all the way up at RB6 because of the age, because of the production. It's insane. Like you cannot replicate this kind of stuff. And he just did it against Buffalo. This week, he gets the Giants. I think we have an interesting breakdown where both him and Mostert are going to have some big weeks here and there. But I think the way that he plays and the home run ability, this is someone that I want on all my teams right now. Snoog.
I don't even know what to go with here.
Right, we're in no man's land.
It's just so many options here for me. Want to scroll down a little bit because my thing actually. Oh wait, here it is. Like wasn't pulling up. I think I'm just gonna go with. I'm gonna go with Devontae Smith because I think, although the Eagles are going through some growing pains with their new offensive coordinator and just Jalen Hurts isn't looking the greatest passing that football, they still have the best offensive line in the league, the best run game in the league, and 2 of the most talented wide receivers in the league. Devontae Smith showed in the first 2 weeks 2 20-plus point games, how dominant he is and how he can perform on just a low amount of targets and his playmaking ability. And he has that touchdown upside as well. We saw he was a top 10 wide receiver last year. I think he can continue to build off and grow towards that again because I think he's easily a top 8 talent in the NFL from just a talent perspective. And his chemistry with Jalen Hurts is only growing. I mean, this is his 3rd year now with Jalen Hurts. The new offensive coordinator is kind of a clown, but I think he'll put things together, figure things out, and kind of get the ball in Devontae Smith's hands, whether it's downfield or underneath. And Jalen Hurts looks great with his deep ball. I mean, he's not playing the best. He's throwing some picks, but that'll shake off, and they'll get things drawn up underneath for A.J. Brown. They've already been doing that. 2 monster weeks, and Devontae Smith his time's coming. So, next pick.
Before you do that again, I got to hit these 2 guys here. The computer took Derrick Henry and T. Higgins. Joe, Derrick Henry for me was I've been saying to everybody, both in Dynasty and in redraft, as soon as we get a monster week like we just got in week 4, I think Derrick Henry is a sell, especially in Dynasty. We're in an area where you can package Derrick Henry in a 3rd and get yourself a 24 first, and I think that's an absolute win. In redraft, are you believing in Derrick Henry the rest of the way? This offense has had a lot of struggles. Right now, he's the RB11. Where do you have him rest of schedule? As his lowest yards per attempt that he's had in his career at 3.9. What are you doing with Derrick Henry?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with on the other kind of aspect, but Tajay Spears is a guy I want on all my rosters.
Yes.
It's giving me like Rashad White vibes from last year with Fournette. Obviously, 2 different animals there with Henry and Fournette, but kind of the same thing with the backups. As for Henry, it's really kind of a game script kind of thing. Against Cincinnati, you're like, yeah, that's going to be probably a good idea. It was a great idea. Indianapolis is next. I think it's going to be another good one. Then Baltimore. And then the bye. So out of the bye, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay. That's not good. And then you look in the playoffs. Houston, Seattle, Houston. So
it seems like he always gets that Houston stack there in the
does.
playoffs. Like whoever makes that schedule, they're like, you know what?
Yeah.
Derrick Henry in the fantasy playoffs,
40.
who drops, 200 yards rushing on him every time.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like, again, another trendy thing, and I know you're agreeing with it, and it's actually a good take. People want to get rid of Henry, this and that, but I'm just going to show my respect. I'm going to have him as a top 12 running back. It's not going to be top 3, or top 5. Not doing the receiving like he did last year, 1 target, 0 targets last 2 weeks. But in these games, just buckle up because he's going to go and drop 5.5 a carry for 150 and probably 2. So he's valuable to have for that reason. But, week to week, if I'm, trying to play a guy like James Cook over him, for example, like we have decisions to make. So, Achane is starting over Henry right now. So slightly downgraded, but with these massive week winning weeks.
Snoog,
You're up. I got auto picked. If you want to remove that real quick, I have my pick loaded up.
My bad. That's because I'm rambling.
Who's your pick?
Jonathan Taylor. And I don't know why he's still on the board. I just saw him. Last time we saw a full, healthy Jonathan Taylor, he was the RB1 overall. And Zach Moss has been an RB1 in this Colts system the past few weeks. So I think Jonathan Taylor is going to come in. I know there's all this rumors about him that he doesn't want to play and all this, but dude, you have to play. If you want to show other teams that you're valuable, you have to come in and you have to show that you're still the same Jonathan Taylor that rushed for 1,800 yards and finishes the RB1. Because no one's given up a high second round pick for you if they think you have this back injury, this ankle injury, you're just tearing down. I mean, you're still one of the best running backs in the NFL. You're going to come into a run-heavy Colts scheme. Anthony Richardson looks great. You're getting tons of red zone opportunities. Just with Richardson and Jonathan Taylor being in that backfield at a shotgun under center, the defense is shitting themselves. And pardon my French, but that's just how it is. And Jonathan Taylor is going to have that potential to house an 80-yard touchdown at any moment to win you your fantasy week. And he's going to get the volume. He's going to get 280 touches. He's probably going to be averaging like 20 to 22 carries from here on out. So I'm going all in on Jonathan Taylor, and you need to get him on your dynasty and redraft squads right now.
Yeah, I'm for it. Zach Moss has been a great fill-in. He has done phenomenal. This was a guy months ago that I was saying, get him as your insurance running back. Right now in Dynasty, as soon as Jonathan Taylor comes back, trade for Zach Moss for nothing. That we don't know. There's a scenario out there where Jonathan Taylor plays a couple games and, has that ankle injury or something and makes it a 6 to 8 week and just kind of rides it out into the sunset because he's getting that contract and getting a year done. For me right now, I know this sounds crazy to take Jalen Waddle. He's wide receiver 56 right now. He had a touchdown called back. He's been someone that, Joe, I know you and I both, in our weekly breakout or bounce back, it's been Jalen Waddle. I think this is finally it. I think Jalen Waddle goes, up over 5-6 receptions, gets 100 yards, and bounces back into that wide receiver 1 radar. Because if Tyreek Hill, heaven forbid, were to go down, Jalen Waddle's the top 5 wide receiver the rest of the way. Even without, he's a wide receiver 1 who's a complete buy low.
Right. No, I totally agree. I mean, touched on a little bit when you're talking about Hill. I mean, we don't even need an injury. We just need a little bit of positive regression. And there are, first 5 weeks of last season, Hill and Waddle were both top 3 wide receivers. And Tua is playing better than last year. It's going to come here for Waddle. And, you really don't want to miss out. Because when it's, the Giants, Panthers, whatever, but then it's Philly, New England, Kansas City, like, buckle up. He's a main weapon here. My pick, I'm just scooping up the RBs, right? My guy is, might be surprising, but it's Aaron Jones, and been disappointing thus far just because of the injury. But, week 1 fully healthy, 47% of snaps is nothing groundbreaking, 27 points, and just an absolute monster. And the offense is pretty good. Obviously a tough week against Detroit, but I kind of credit that to the Detroit defense. I think Aaron Jones is being missed by the Packers. Was on a snap count against Detroit. They didn't have him. Watson was also on the snap count. Vegas this week, it's a nice get right spot for him before the bye. Coming out of the bye, is going to be fully healthy. Gets Denver, Minnesota, Rams. Like, if you're 3-1, 4-0, go get Aaron Jones. Just showing my respect to these vets here. In a little bit of a different vein, I'll finally move away from that position. And, looking at the wide receivers here, there really are 4 names. They are the 4 names on the board first: Garrett Wilson, DK Metcalf, Ridley, and Debo. I'm going to go Metcalf. If I had to order those guys, it would be Metcalf, Debo, Wilson, Ridley, just right now. I believe in DK, and we're seeing floor performances from him. If you look at his game log, hasn't scored less than 12.5 points, but hasn't scored more than 17. And that's pretty valuable just week to week. With Olave, like, we haven't seen that from Olave. We saw it weeks 1 through 3, and then it was 1 point. Like, DK doesn't have 1 point really in his range of outcomes, and JSN is not factoring in, unfortunately, for all of us in this call, at least. But again, I just need to show respect here, and nice schedule, Cincinnati, Arizona. So I like him as a high-end wide receiver too.
You left my guy, we've been taking all the running backs. You left my guy DeAndre Swift, who I think has top 5 rest of the way, ability. He has been, we didn't see this, right? Like Kenny Gainwell week 1, he goes out and dominates the touches. Then week 2, you're like, same like we've been talking about a lot of these players, right? He gets as many, 27 touches. And you're like, okay, maybe that was just game script. Then he does it again. DeAndre Swift is here to stay. I'm paying a mid to late 24 first in Dynasty. And in redraft, I just made a trade to go get him. I'm all in on DeAndre Swift rest of the way.
Yeah, I actually love this Mark Andrews pick because I honestly think he's easily going to be a top 2 tight end this year. And
so good.
Yeah, exactly. And with Lamar, him and their connection that they've built, and the Ravens just look overall so much better. I say it every year that they're going to be really good, and then they end up being a gross team, and you just see like Justice Hill and Gus Edwards running around on the field doing absolutely nothing and just holding back Lamar's value. But Andrews has started off great, even coming out of the down week last week, but he just had a monster game, and I had that Lamar Andrews stack going in 2 leagues, and I just absolutely dominated. Lamar looks so much better throwing the football. Zay Flowers is opening up the top of the defense. They lacked that last year. That's why Andrews had a little bit of a down year, but now that there's actually weapons surrounding Andrews, he's the kind of that main target again, and the field is not just primarily focused on him. Jahmyr Gibbs, I love this pick, and this is what I'm rolling with because I'm not worried about 4 weeks. I mean, he's a rookie. Rookies take time to settle in, and we saw what Christian McCaffrey and Kamara started off last 4 weeks last year. Breece Hall, other stud running backs like that, they started off slow. And Jahmyr Gibbs is averaging 13.5 touches on like 40% of snaps, which is phenomenal. If he bumps that number up to like 60%, 62%, not even, maybe like 55, then we're looking at like probably like 16, 17 touches a game. And where the value is in the receiving game. I mean, this is a guy that is going to be super efficient. I just think he needs to put it all together. He's flashed that elite talent, that speed. He's breaking tackles at a high level. He's second in the NFL amongst all running backs, right behind Devin Achane in most explosive run rate. I mean, he's looked absolutely phenomenal this year so far. A lot of designed pass routes for him. We saw against the Packers on that night where they motioned him in, and then he ran that out route on that 3rd and short. Design play. Goff literally got the ball, instantly looked to Gibbs, strike, boom, converted the first down. We're going to see a lot more of that. Jameson Williams coming in. He's going to take the top off the defense for Gibbs, and everything underneath is just going to be there. I mean, we're going to see a lot more Gibbs and less David Montgomery as the year progresses. And we saw a lot of David Montgomery because, I mean, the team was up 24-3 in the second quarter before Gibbs could even, like, step on the field. I mean, if you look at the first drive, Gibbs out-snapped Dima. I mean, he got the first 2 snaps. Like, it went Dima, and then it was Gibbs. So, I mean, we got to look at it like that. Like, Gibbs' time, it's going to come. It's maybe not be until week 8, week 10, but when it comes, he's going to be a league winner.
All right, so our listeners really want to get your perspective on a lot of these things, Joe. So we're gonna do we're gonna abandon the draft board real quick, and we're just gonna go to a little keep trade cut. Old school, sure. Just 3 guys. I'm gonna go Calvin Ridley, Nico Collins, and Debo Samuel.
Oh boy. Okay.
Because
Okay. Okay.
everyone's asking. I mean, Amari has been phenomenal, right? Like
Yeah.
whenever anybody in that San Francisco offense sits, when Debo sat, Ayuk and Kittle look great, right? When Ayuk sat, Debo and Kittle ate. So we're in that area. Same thing with Nico Collins, right? We see some boom weeks for Nico. We see Tank popping in there. You know, it's an interesting scenario. And then Calvin Ridley's probably the guy I get the most questions about. I mean, he had phenomenal week one, a dud in the next couple of weeks. Last week, saved by that touchdown, you know, with a little bit of broken coverage here. So between these three guys, keep one, trade one, cut one.
Yeah. Well, if we're just talking about the trades, I don't like trading players at their floor. I got a bunch of questions about Ridley, and it's like, you can trade him, sure, but his ceiling value is probably a top 5 wide receiver. His median value is probably top 15, and you're going to trade him in that wide receiver 2 range if anyone even wants to get him. You don't want to do that. Same thing with Debo. Nobody wants Debo after Brandon Ayuk put up 150 and a top 5 performance. Like, nobody wants him. So I'm going to trade Nico Collins. Not that I don't believe in Nico Collins, and it's unfortunate I have to trade / cut 2 of these guys, but it was a slow week for Tank Dell. I don't think CJ Stroud is going to have a perfect record and perfect game every single game. No disrespect, he's literally a beast. But
Yes,
okay, well, no interceptions yet. Like, there's going to be a game, a rough 1 or 2 games, and that's fine. It's totally fine. So I'm gonna trade Nico, and just talking about Ridley versus Debo. I want Debo. I've seen it from him, in the last few years. I've seen it this year. Talk about Kamara being like a wide receiver at the running back position. It's the opposite. You have a pass catching running back at your wide receiver position when you have Debo, and he is a monster. I truly believe he was banged up, double injury, doing the decoy thing, and Ridley's going to get the cut, unfortunately. But don't actually do that. I would just bench him if you really want to.
Same question for you, Snoog. You lean in the same way there. I think the tricky part is everybody keeps asking about Ridley. Everybody keeps asking about Nico.
I think I'm going to do the same. Cut Nico. I'm going to go the opposite than Joe, though. I'm going to go trade Debo, keep Ridley, because I think Calvin Ridley's the alpha in this Jags offense, and I don't think it's been a him issue. I think it's been an entire Jaguars offense issue. Trevor Lawrence has looked bad. The only one doing good is Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. So, I mean, Trevor Lawrence has just been kind of getting bailed out by those underneath pass routes. Travis Etienne's even had a little bit of a down stick in efficiency, and we need to see all that improve. And that's going to come with the play calling. That's going to come with that horrible offensive line stepping it up. And that's going to come with Trevor Lawrence playing at an MVP level of football. I mean, Calvin Ridley had a phenomenal week 1. He's been making insane plays all through the preseason training camp. Even that week 1, we were all like, wow, he's back. He's a top 5 wide receiver. Now he's had a little bit of a down stretch, but I think maybe he has that later half stretch of the year where he's just absolutely firing off, getting built into the system, getting more involved, kind of facing easier coverages. Like, he had AJ Terrell in his throat all on Sunday. So expect a better, especially with Tre'Davious White out now with that season-ending injury, expect a big bounce back from Calvin Ridley in week 5.
I'm glad you brought up Lawrence, because the next one, Joe, we're going Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and Anthony Richardson. So, I mean, obviously Fields bounces back in a huge way. He was someone we talked about, if you were 0-3, Justin Fields was that perfect buy, right? Like a guy you could go in there and try to get on a discount and improve somewhere else. So we're going Lawrence, who struggled, Fields, who struggled up until last week, and then Anthony Richardson, who had the injury, but when he plays, is absolutely balling out.
Yeah, I want Justin Fields on every fantasy team I have. I don't care if it's Dynasty. I don't care if it's a 6-man redraft with your friends from work. I don't care.
It's not pretty, but thank you. I'm so glad people were like, this was my guy in the offseason. I keep seeing Twitter everywhere be like, Dad's got to be in a cave somewhere. And I'm like, he's still, if you look what he did this year compared to last year, he's still way above where he was last year.
Yeah, I was literally just going to bring that up. So, I mean, last year you had 6 straight weeks of under 20 points. 3 of them were under 10. 6 straight weeks. I mean, this was the trash of the trash on the waivers. And then all of a sudden, 25, 26, 42, 40, 24. And now it's like, this is the best player in fantasy, even in single QB. Okay, so this year, every single game has been over 10 points. That's not a high bar. I get it. It only took till week 4 to see 29 points. He didn't even do it with his legs. And I get it's Denver, but if he showed it and DJ Moore showed it, and maybe it gets better, because in these tougher games, he's going to have to do it with his legs. So I want Fields, so I will keep Fields, and I will trade. See, this sucks because I love all these guys. I'll trade Lawrence.
We don't want to make it easy for you, right?
Yeah.
Like I could just throw in, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Right,
here.
right.
That's
The
fun.
reason I don't want to trade Richardson is because his value is only going to go up. Like, some of my subscribers every week they say, I have Herbert and my QB2 on my bench is Richardson. Who do I trade him for 1-for-1? And last week it was like, oh, do I trade him for Christian Kirk? And then this week it's, oh, do I trade him for Nico Collins? And I said to him, no, just hold him, because eventually you're going to be able to trade him for like Ridley or Debo, right? Straight up. You truly will be able to. He's going to be a top 5 guy when all it's going to take is a few more weeks. So unfortunately, I will cut Richardson in this example, but I don't want to. And I guess I'll trade Lawrence. Had an okay week in week 4, nothing special, obviously, but just kind of capitalizing on that name value. I still believe in him. If he wants to see the bench for CJ Stroud, I don't disagree with that at the moment. But yeah.
Okay, I got one more here, and this has been a blast. Before we close out,
Yeah.
We're gonna go to the tight end position: T.J. Hawkinson, Sam Laporta, or George Kittle.
Oh my goodness. I'm keeping, rest of season. Who do I think's the best? Who do I want to start? It's Hawkinson. I'm going to trade Laporta. So I'm going to keep Hawk. I'm going to trade Laporta just because I think he has more trade value right now than Kittle. Again, I hate trading players, after they just put up a dud. 1.9 points for Kittle is not going to cut it. It's not who he is. Unfortunately, the other option in this example is cutting him. So we're going to have to cut Kittle, but I'll cash in on Laporta. Again, I'm always a little skeptical of these rookies. Obviously, he's, putting up historic target numbers and reception numbers and yardage numbers for rookie tight ends. No doubt in my mind he's a baller, but I'll cash in on that for if I can, package him with a good receiver, a Puka maybe to go grab like a really good receiver, I would do that.
Okay, I lied. We got to put you on the hot seat for one more, and I'm going to make this as hard as possible. Travis Etienne, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Alvin Kamara for the both of you.
Oh my God. Snow, you want to go first?
Yeah. Oh, it's
Man,
crazy. I got two of their jerseys hanging up in my room right now.
Joe, how many tweets can you go without Snoog having one of those 3 guys in there? It's going to be in there.
Hey, I'm the same way. So,
every day.
What do you got?
I'm going to go with keep Travis Etienne because me and Joe have been discussing, we've been chatting back and forth. He's just getting elite bell cow usage. I mean, he's getting 20 plus touches a game. The efficiency wasn't there last week, but big week 1 and 3 from him. And we saw him pop that big touchdown against the Colts. He's getting tons of receiving utilization too. We didn't expect that. We wanted that, but we didn't actually think it was going to happen. And now it is. So it's upside for him there. I'm going to go with trade Kamara, because I just think he's a top 8 running back rest away. I don't think he has the ceiling Travis Etienne has or I should say the floor, but I think he has a higher ceiling. So I think he's a guy that could be averaging 4 to 5 receptions the rest of the way per game and getting 15 to 20 touches and just being a very valuable player for that Saints offense, especially because Carr has that injury. So we're going to see a ton of checkdowns. And I'm going to go with cut Jahmyr Gibbs just because he's a rookie. Tough growing pains start for him, but all 3 of these guys, get them all on your rosters. You won't be disappointed. At one point, all 3 of these guys are going to be top 10 running backs this year. Mark my word.
I share that. So I want to keep Etienne in a better offense than Kamara and, seeing the same volume, a little more rushing, a little less receiving, whatever. Keeping Etienne. I'm going to trade Kamara because I don't think he's going to get 14 or 13 targets every week. He'll probably get 8. But if you say here, dude, here's a running back who is guaranteed 13 points a week, people will buy that. And honestly, it might not be a lie. And then I guess I'll cut Gibbs. But I mean, with Gibbs real quick, it's again, if you're 3-1, 4-0, please go get Jahmyr Gibbs and just start him in your flex. It doesn't matter. Don't start him. Wait to see it because you will see it. And when that happens, don't be mad you didn't start him. Understand what you're doing and put him in rest of season and just enjoy because that's going to be a fun time, come week, 7, 8.
So
Joe, this has been an absolute blast. I know Snoog and I have been trying to get you on for a while and chopping it up. So this has been one of my favorite shows in the last couple of months. You know, you did a phenomenal job. If you guys are not following Joe, give him what you're working on. I mean, obviously your Twitter feed is phenomenal. I know you have subscriptions there, podcasts, everything. So why don't you tell them where they can find your work?
Yeah, at No Expert FF on Twitter. We're doing a series now on YouTube, Hero RB to Glory. It's working out really well. I drafted one running back, 2-2, lost Cup, but the one running back was McCaffrey. We stashed Kyron, we stashed Achan. So like we're cooking, Cup's coming back. But it's cool. I kind of want to give you guys a peek into how I manage my teams. And we just talk about the running back position for like a half hour every week. So definitely check that out on YouTube and subscribe on Twitter for all my rankings. And I answer, fantasy questions for subscribers. So if you need that, let me know.
Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and enjoy the process.